listening to the Shite Talk podcast show. Shut up and sit down.
Welcome once again to the Shite Talk podcast show, episode 215. Mark and Ken.
What's the story?
On episode 215. We got there in the end.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, a lot coming up in the show. We have Al Baldwin. We'll be talking about a few TV series as well. We'll be talking about property and housing. Yeah, as we take on the likes of News Talk on our political segments of our show. We're coming for you guys.
We're getting a little bit too serious.
But we'll also have ideas a week to bring it back, the tone back down again. Don't worry. Yeah. Like we said, we'll have Nigel farage. We'll have a guy swimming with alligators, and believe it or not, he gets bitten.
No, that's the story ruined, Mark.
Oh shit! And we'll have so there's plenty of idiots to go around. So even though I've technically ruined a story, don't worry, we got you covered on this week's show.
Yeah, something for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So we might as well get into it. Did you hear what happened with Alec Baldwin? Did you read the story or any clicking?
Yeah, I read the story.
Yeah, it's it's crazy. Like, it just seems to be an absolute shit show there.
Yeah.
What happened with it? It is mad. Like, I always thought after Bruce Lee's son got shot on set, like, there wouldn't be a live round on set. Like, I don't know.
It's happened loads of times since then.
Yeah, but like,
it's happened 3 times on this film shoot.
Yeah, like, what I don't get is why would there be live rounds on set?
So I looked into this a lot because I was like, how the fuck did this happen? Like, I've been looking at anything I can actually find about this story, and there's a couple of problems with it that I've seen. So the first problem that I've seen is the armor. The head armor is only 24. Like, how long have you been doing this that you're a head armorer at 24?
You could going up with guns, so.
Yeah, so I looked into that. So her father was some, like, iconic, legendary armorer from the fucking 50s or 60s or something. And that's obviously where she learned her trade from.
Her dad shot Bruce Lee, son.
Yeah, like, her dad used to work with Clint Eastwood and stuff, so, like, he probably knows his shit. So apparently sometimes live rounds get used for certain shots in movies.
Yeah, because I was kind of
did not know this.
I was kind of wondering this because I was like, is this something in terms of a realistic, like the bullet coming from it initially? Obviously, if it's just hitting like a pad or something, there's no one in the way of a live round. But in terms of for cinematography reasons, it looks like the split second see the bullet leave the trigger. Is it for that, or like I just don't understand it?
Yeah, apparently sometimes they use live rounds when there's nobody like in the way of them.
Yeah,
but also apparently an old trick that armorers used to use.
Yeah,
which is maybe what happened here. I don't know. It's just speculation. Apparently an old trick that they used to use was if they ran out of bullets, because there's no such thing as a prop gun. It's a real gun, and they put blanks in it. So apparently they used to, if they ran out of blanks, they would get real bullets and they would take the projectile off it and replace it with either a wad of paper or some wax.
Yeah.
So that it still fires, it still makes a bang, it still gives off smoke. There's just no projectile fired out of it. So, like, I was thinking, did she perhaps learn that trick from her dad? Did she maybe do it and mix up the bullets?
Yeah, because they were shooting. I think that people were like using the guns to shoot cans earlier on in the set, is what I heard. And like, maybe there was mix up with guns because it was a ranch, so I'm sure there would have been guns at the ranch.
And she's supposed to. So she left. There's 3 guns left outside the area that they were shooting in. And she's supposed to, like, hand the gun to the actor and take the gun back off the actor and be in charge of the gun. But for some reason, it was a director that handed the gun to Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, and like somebody shouted "cold gun." Like, who the fuck would shout "cold gun" without known 100% of the case that like that gun is cold.
Like that's the armorer's job. Like so, she just did not do her job.
Yeah. Like, it was meant to be a bit of a shit show. Like, their crew members were complaining about working conditions previous. And
crew members are always complaining about working conditions.
But, like, there was several of them walked off set earlier on that day in protests about conditions in terms of working hours and other things. So, like, I don't know. It was a very small budget movie, and, like, they probably had, like...
I don't think it was a small budget movie.
Well, what I seen when the article I wrote in terms when they were talking about it, they said there had been complaints. The budget was very small, so people were working long hours. People were complaining about the commutes and waiting time to get their paycheck. Were a few of the reasons why people walked off set. And then there was health and safety issues after the gun had went off twice, and there was a text message saying this is very unsafe. That happened twice prior that afternoon, and people were like trying to bring into the attention of the director or people who were operating the movie, like, look at this. And there apparently weren't no safety meetings in terms of, they didn't really address the two prior gunfires. One was a stunt double of Alex Baldwin's. A gun went off in terms of like when he was doing something with the gun. And then it happened another time prior to that, and there was no kind of health and safety meeting. There was no, people weren't brought around and say, "Hey, look, we had two accidental live rounds fired. What the fuck is happening? This is a protocol that you need to follow." It was kind of just everyone seemed to be rushed. Is what I read about anyway.
Apparently, they had trouble actually finding somebody to work as an armorer for the movie. People kept turning it down. That's how they ended up with, I'm guessing, an inexperienced.
Yeah, like enthusiastic novice. Yeah, like because I think the scene where Yoan got shot was a gun scene, but I don't know if necessarily Alec Baldwin's character was meant to fire the gun, because apparently he was meant to be like, it was meant to be in the middle of a gun scene, but he was in a church. And
he was practicing. There was something he was supposed to do where he drew his gun and he fired. So like he was practicing the gun draw, and he was supposed to. The scene that they were shooting, the director had him that he was supposed to pull the gun, point it at the camera, and fire into the camera.
Yeah,
and he practiced the draw, and then the final practice that he done, he pulled the gun, he pointed at the camera, and he fired into the camera. And that's when, obviously, the gun went off and it shot the cinematographer.
Yeah, because I also thought you're not meant to really ever aim a gun at a person in a shot because of this mix-up. So there's a lot of, like I didn't know about, like, in terms of, like, there's meant to be safety protocols around all these things so that shit like this doesn't happen.
Yeah, like, it happened a couple of years ago. A guy shot himself on the scene of some TV show. He was fucking around with the gun thinking it was blanks in it. Well, it was blanks in it, but he didn't fully understand how blanks worked. He put it to his head and he pulled the trigger.
Killed himself.
Yeah. He didn't understand that, like, you know, it still fires like either a paper or a wax substance out of it. Like, it'll only fire at maybe like 4 feet, but like that 4 feet is going to be fairly high velocity at first.
Yeah. Oh, if you put a fucking at the length of like your arm to your head, yeah, obviously that's going to be, that wax going to come out pretty quick. Yeah, like, because I don't know, like it seems strange that obviously there probably is reasons why, I don't know why there is live rounds, but even if there are live rounds used, it should be a case where there's no possible way of mixing up. There should be clear markers for these things. There's definitely there needs to be some prosecutions here. Like there needs, like, from what is initially reading, what the article I read in it, like, this is beyond negligence here. This is like what happened on set. The fact there was no health and safety protocol after 2 prior misfirages. There was no one reprimanded for this happening, and they kept going along. Like, this was the third, was it? Or there was 3 prior?
Third one, yeah.
This was a third misfire of a live round on set. Like, yeah, that needs to be seriously looked at. Like, I'd be surprised if there wasn't prosecutions. Not on Alec Baldwin. You'd imagine it was instant parody, the whole thing.
Like, the issue there is, like, who do you prosecute?
Yeah, well, do you prosecute
like,
the
do you
armor?
prosecute the director? Do you prosecute the armorer?
Who's necessarily in charge of the set in terms of operation of set, in terms of implementing health and safety protocols, implementing
the director and the producer?
Yeah, so like those
but
are
the armorer is the one that's in charge of firearm safety.
Yeah, well, like I said, like there can't be this a tragedy because there was clear negligence here. There was cause that, like, there has to be justice for this. There can't be this. We'll try to learn our lesson from this.
Like nobody got prosecuted in the previous like TV or even like the Brandon Lee thing. Like nobody ever got prosecuted for that. Like
yeah. Well, see, this is a sad thing about it, like, in terms of this. And although this is a very, very rare occurrence on sets, you just feel when people are this negligent that there's not. You know, there's another thing I was wondering about, and it's bow and arrow shots.
Bow and arrow shots, yeah.
Are the tips just like, you know how you can go, like, it's kind of like pellet paintballing, but you can do it with arrows, and they have, like, kind of like little sponges that you fire at people. Are they just them and that are CGI to look like arrow tips, or?
I think they use real arrows.
All right.
But it would be like that's going to be a safer situation though, because they're not using blanks. So like everybody's going to know this is a fucking real arrow. Get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah. You're not going to mistaken a guy.
Did you see, just while we're on the Alec Baldwin thing? Did you see Donald Trump's son?
No.
You haven't heard what he's been doing?
No, what's he been doing?
You know, Alec Baldwin is, he's like a campaigner for stricter gun control.
Yeah.
In America, and he absolutely hates the NRA.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump's son has started selling T-shirts that say "Guns don't kill people, Alec Baldwin does."
Oh my god!
Like, what the fuck is that about?
Yeah. Well, you know, like, isn't Alec Baldwin a big like campaigner for like the Democratic Party, and I think he's prior funded a campaign for the Democrat, like, and yeah, like that's just like taking a shot at the enemy, pretty much. Like, it's a fucking shitty thing to do after stuff like this, but that'll just show you the kind of people they are.
Yeah, like that's fucking.
Have you seen the Robin Williams trailer?
Yeah.
Oh my god, the fucking actor that plays him, like, in terms of the look of Robin Williams and in terms of sounding like Robin Williams, it's incredible.
You see, Robin Williams' daughter was like, "Will people please stop tagging me in this?"
Why? Oh, because she's like been tagged a million times. Like, she's clearly aware.
Like, I don't want to see some guy pretending to be my dad on what was the second saddest day of my dad's life.
Yeah. Like,
stop tagging me in it.
Yeah, I think it's Jamie Costa plays him, isn't it?
I have no idea who he is.
Yeah, but whoever he is, like it is, like, he, like, in terms of how he sounds, his mannerisms, everything seems incredible. Can't wait to see the movie itself. But yeah, I can understand if you are related or you knew Robin Williams, or like personally, how seeing him would just bring back, especially at that moment of his life, would bring back such bad memories. Because was it suicide that he died of?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was suicide. Like, clearly he had mental health issues throughout his career. Like, and people who knew him probably don't want to be really reminded of a really bad time like that. And it probably brings up shitty memories. But yeah, in terms of being a fan of Robin Williams and seeing a movie that portrays him that well is pretty cool.
Like, it's I didn't even know they were making a movie, like a Robin Williams movie.
Yeah, but like what they can do with CGI in terms of making people look younger, you know, in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit,
Yeah.
and they made your man who played Frodo, like after all the rings, Lord of the Rings were shot and all, The Hobbit, he looked like a younger version of himself through CGI.
Yeah, it's mad.
It is mad because like one of the things I noticed in the Wolverine movies, especially like when they went back, like obviously it was almost shot in reverse. The further you go back into the future, Wolverine is suddenly getting older. Yeah, like, and then you go into Logan, like in the span of basically your man who plays Xavier's life, Logan has aged nearly very similar to him.
Yeah.
Which is not really explained. I mean, like, there's a lot of kind of like, if you looked at it really hard enough, there's a lot of holes in it. You kind of just have to just ignore all the blatant holes of the movie. Just ignore that part. I know it just makes sense. Just don't look at it too closely. Just let's move on. Action, explosion, stabby.
Like, a lot of movies are like that. Like, when they decide not to do sequels, they'll do prequels, and then they're like, how the fuck are we going to do this?
Yeah, but like, if
and then they're just like, we'll just ignore the fact that the actor is clearly older.
Yeah, exactly. Just push past this. This is kind of like, you know, Sean Connery played a Russian Marine officer once.
In The Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, and they're like, just pretend he doesn't have a Scottish accent.
Yeah, like, he accepted that role, like, last minute as well. I can't remember who was supposed to do it, but they pulled out of the movie.
Yeah, well, like, I guess, have you seen that series about Chernobyl? It was called Chernobyl.
No.
Oh my god, it's so good. You should definitely watch it. None of the actors have Russian accents, because they're like, we could do that, but that would almost come like a focal point of how good the actors' Russian accents are, if they're authentic to the area, and people would focus too much on it. So we decided not to worry about Russian accents or any accents, and people are just use their own how they sound normally, and we'll get them to use certain lingos that would have been used if you translate obviously into English. Or I don't know if parts of it was in Russian or Ukrainian, because it happened in the Ukraine, didn't it?
Yeah, Ukraine, I think.
Yeah, it was part of the Soviet Union, and yeah, our area that is Russia. Everything past Poland, and sometimes including. It's just like, yeah, Russia.
Have you watched Vikings?
No.
Vikings is good because they do like so they speak English in Vikings, and at first you're kind of like, why the fuck are they speaking English? Like, they're fucking Scandinavian.
Yeah.
And then when they go to like England and stuff, English people aren't speaking English; they're speaking gibberish. So then you're like, so we're supposed to like be understanding what they're saying because we're supposed to be understanding Swedish and not able to understand the English people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You're taking it from, if you're in this tribe and then you're coming to, and you speak this language and you're coming to this foreign area and they're going blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and then as the series goes on, like, obviously some of the Vikings start speaking English and you start understanding English in it.
Oh, that's very intelligent, I have to say. Yeah. I know people who've started it recently and they're saying their favorite thing they've watched ever. I'm like, oh, Jesus, that's...
Vikings is really, really good. I watched the first 4 seasons of it.
Yeah, I did start season 1 when it first came out. And it was kind of, there was I think Walking Dead I just started Walking Dead as well, and there was a lot of series going on, and I was like, something has to give. I'm not as emotionally attached to this one, so I'll leave it. And then my uncle was like, "Oh, you should really, really start the series. It's so good." And then it was just like,
Walking Dead. I kind of regret watching Walking Dead.
I don't regret it. First 3 seasons are class.
Yeah, but like I watched it till like season 8.
Yeah,
I was like, I should have stopped watching this like 2 seasons ago.
It's kind of like a rock star that gets shitter over time. But you're still a fan of the early stuff. You're kind of like, let's just remember the glory days. Let's pretend he's not this anymore. So you're kind of like,
it's so bad.
yeah, it is like it's now. Like I thought like some seasons you're like, oh yeah, they're onto something, but then it just falls. I thought long and hard about why Walking Dead like got so bad, like in terms of a series, and it was just too inevitable because eventually you run out of storylines, so you start just rehashing it. Because
Well, they didn't run out of storylines because they had like plenty of fucking.
I know,
stuff
I
that
know
they could use.
material,
The
but
problem, the problem with it was, do you remember how far did you watch in it?
I'm up to the current season.
Oh, you know when like Glenn died.
Yeah.
So the problem was that when that episode aired, it got so many people complaining about it.
Yeah.
Like they actually said this themselves. So many people complained about that episode and how violent it was that they had to reshoot and re-edit the rest of the season to take out some of the like really ridiculous violence. And that was the thing that kind of like plodded Walking Dead along, was that it was violent.
Yeah, well, I don't know, just as a fan of it, what I kind of just came very repetitive. We found an area that's safe. Oh, gets invaded by a different tribe. Oh, we go to war with them. We have to leave this area. Oh, we found another place. It gets invaded, and it just starts to recycle. So, like, even before Negan comes into it, we'd already seen a similar storyline in the previous two series. Whereas up to season 3, everything was new. It was just a different experience in every season. And season 3 was the first time they encountered a different gang who they had to overcome. So that's why that was so exciting. And after that, it was just, I think season 5, whichever is one where was set on the train track one, really was just, it was one of the worst seasons possible. I thought once Negan came into it, it started to come a little bit better, but then it almost started coming like the zombies were almost a side. Coming latest season were almost like a side story of a zombie apocalypse, and I think when it comes to that stage, I think it's like you're kind of like, what's the point of it now?
Like, it also got annoying that they didn't like. The first few seasons were good because you never knew what was going to happen, who was going to die, who was going to stay alive, whatever. And then it got to a stage where it's like, oh, well, this character is never going to die, that character is never going to die, this character is never going to die. So, like, you're like, there's no excitement in it.
Yeah,
like, they had
they fear the Walking Dead.
Like, Daryl, like, how many times did he almost die?
Yeah, like, exactly.
You're watching, you're going, well, I know that something's going to happen because he's not going to die.
Yeah, whereas I think if, like, well, no big characters, the first few seasons, big characters did go off quite regularly, and that's
what I mean. Like, and then it got like, you were like, at the start, you were like, oh no, my favorite character is like fucking trapped with a lot of zombies. Fuck.
Yeah.
And they die. And then as it goes on, you're like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, he's not going to die.
Yeah, exactly. Because like by the time Negan came into it, it's like, well, they always win. Of course they're going to win. This is what they do. I'm like that kind of suspense is taken out, and I think once that is taken out in a zombie movie, like, and they had so many good material to work from, and like all the games that I've ever played with Walking Dead had really good storylines to it. I'm also like, if they kept going through this like storyline of people dying, or then they go to a different group of people, and then sometimes they meet up in another season, and isn't just fixated on necessarily Carl and what's his dad's name?
Rick,
and isn't fixated on just those alone, and they're just a part of people that you're following along the way. Maybe there would be in greater life. Like if we found out who Negan was and then we were brought along, and then there was that scene. I kind of feel like it would have been a bigger impact. We would have seen it coming, wouldn't be that shocked, but we were like, oh my god, Negan and Rick are going to finally meet. And
yeah, like it was really, I don't know.
Yeah, obviously,
it's really shit.
Yeah, it's obviously it's easy for us to sit here and go, well, this is what they should have done, but realistically, we wouldn't have thought of that to begin with, so we should really shut our mouths. Like,
they didn't think of it to begin with either.
But in terms of putting together the storylines leading up to this, it's easier when something's made going, oh, well, he should have done this, he should have done that. Because George R.R. Martin was talking about this in terms of, like, fans were saying, oh, you should have done this. Or if I was, well, he goes, well, if you wrote Game of Thrones, you wouldn't have wrote Game of Thrones because you didn't think of it. I did. Like, it's easy for you to criticize now once it's made, but, like, I came up with all these premises. I know it's different when it comes to, like, a comic book whatever the word is, about reinterpretation.
Because, like, nothing even in The Walking Dead matches the comic books.
Yeah, no, obviously, and anytime you get stuff like this, especially where there's a lot of source material, you have to cut stuff out.
But, like, they like, completely rewrote it. Like, there's nothing that matches it.
There are certain things. Like, I've seen, like, when Rick dies, it happens a lot sooner. They kept him on or something like that, isn't it?
Rick loses a hand.
Yeah.
Like, they never did that, and there's loads of stuff, like.
Yeah, but he always gets...
Characters survive longer than they did in the TV show, which I can understand, because obviously it makes it more exciting if characters keep dying, but then the only reason that Rick never died was because Andrew Lincoln said, oh, if they ever kill off Rick, I'm going to spoil whatever I know about the show.
Yeah, well, I guess fans go, it's a comic book. They already know what's going to happen in the show.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to spoil whatever I know about the show if my character gets killed off. That's why, like, they're making 2 movies with him.
Yeah, like, he's actually gone into, like...
He's a fucking terrible actor. He was good when Walking Dead started, and he started getting worse and worse as it went on.
Yeah.
And he says he doesn't watch back his performance, and I think that's the problem.
Do you listen back to your performance?
Yeah, but like like if he's acting, like surely, like he doesn't take direction either. Like the director will come up to him and say, "Oh, that wasn't great. We should reshoot that scene." He's like, "No, I'm done with it."
Well, isn't he directing a few episodes?
Yeah, he directed a few episodes and stuff. But like, surely if like Robert Kirkman, who wrote the fucking thing, is like, your performance there wasn't great, you're kind of going, okay, not going, well, fuck you, I've done it.
That what it comes down to, like, where a director go, well, this person's now a problem on set. Let's just get rid of the character and kill him off. And even if he spoils it, you have to have that power over a person, over your crew. Be like, I'm in charge here, and if anyone kicks up, there's going to be consequences. Because if you don't have consequences, then obviously you have the inmates running the asylum then.
Yeah, but I think that's how Walking Dead ended up. Like, it ended up with too many characters that were like, don't kill my character.
I want to survive another season. Yeah, because you get paid, once it goes over the 100th episode, there's like a thing where you get paid, there's some kind of like, in your clause that every time it's shown you get paid royalties or something like that about the 100th episode.
Yeah, like that's why they got rid of, what's her name? Lauren Cohen asked for more money. Because they had obviously let her stick around it for a little bit too long. And they said no. And she refused to film any scenes where her character died. That's why they brought her back in season 10.
Oh, really? He should have been like, okay, you're out as far as and you go missing for a second. Or she goes, she goes missing. You go, oh, she was killed by zombies? Oh, we didn't.
Yeah, kill them off camera.
Yeah, kill them off camera. I think it's going to go up to over basically €100 to fill up your car. Like in some places, it's going to be 170 for petrol, and be 153 or 163 for diesel to fill up your car. So like whether or not you'd like consider getting a smaller car or going electric.
A smaller car doesn't solve the problem.
Well, I got a smaller car because I drive less miles.
If you're putting €100 into your car every week, you're still going to be putting €100 into your car every week. You're just going to be topping up more regularly.
I think with smaller engine cars, like you pay less road tax. You pay all these other things, so like it would cost of like driving in terms of that, and they might be more fuel efficient.
I kind of like the way Americans do fuel. Like, it might be $5 per fucking litre, but you've no road tax. You pay your tax on how much fuel you use.
Yeah.
Because, like, whether our Mary down the road that only drives the car from her house to Mass pays the exact same road tax as somebody who drives around the place the whole time.
The idea of, like, if you are Mary get 1.1 litre car, you pay less.
Yeah, but that's where I think, like, they should just fuck road tax, get rid of it, and just add it to fuel prices, so that she pays her €50 a year that she uses in tax.
Well, how will we pay for our properties? That's where that tax goes. Imagine explain that to some other country. Wait, your tax that you pay, your road tax goes to your housing? Yeah.
Most recently, most road tax is going towards fixing water pipes. Because, there's a whole fucking backlash against actually paying to fix water pipes.
The idea of road tax is the maintenance of the area. Road tax, like, water is paid was going to be paid three different ways. Like, it was going to be paid through road tax, then through stamp duty, and then through property tax. So you're being basically charged three different ways for the same thing.
The original purpose of road tax is actually maintenance of the roads. Like, that's why people have such a big issue with paying road tax, is because a lot of the main roads you use are in shit.
I think if they came along and said, okay, so we're going to reduce road tax, we're either going to get rid of stamp duty or we're going to get rid of property tax, and we're going to introduce like a water charge, then people would be like, oh no, but it was basically, no, all those are saying the same. So you're going to pay the same for them, but we're then going to charge you for water. So then you're like, well, what's my property tax paying for? If it's not paying for water and electricity around the area. Like, if that's not what your property tax is paying for, to maintain the basic services around the area.
Like, we are literally one of the only countries in the world that don't pay water tax.
Well, we pay in other ways. Just because, like, taxes for certain things, and this is like what Americans also say, like, it's not really, all the tax isn't really segregated off for stuff. So, like, they just figure out a way of what they need to generate in terms of to pay for different infrastructures around the country. So they say, oh, what's the fairest way of taking money off people? And they do, okay, so there's property tax, and then we charge you up for how nice your property is. And then there's road tax, and we'll do that based on the size of your car, how many cars you have, blah, blah, blah. And all that money is then conjoined and, like, then budgeted off for different things. So, like, yeah, there could be a water tax. Is, like, if there was a need to increase money in terms of pay these services, eventually someone is going to have to pay all these taxes. And, like, if you are in a smaller income, let's say if you were renting or if you were struggling to get by, you're paying week to week, and then another tax comes in on top of this, you're going to need more money. So you're going to look for an increase. Your job might be at the minimum struggling to survive. So they're going to try to increase their prices, and they might have pushback either by their customers or by whatever reasons they can't increase it, or they become uncompetitive, and it doesn't really work. Like, so that's why I think overtaxing people is a problem.
If the money that was taken for certain things was actually allowed to be used for those certain things, and it didn't have to be used in other areas, it would be perfect.
Yeah, like, in the ideal world, that would
That's
be perfect.
the problem. Like, the problem is that people are like, I'm not paying for water because my car tax already pays for my water. Yeah, but your car tax is not supposed to pay for your water. It's supposed to pay for the road.
Yeah, but then be other unexpected things. Like you need also stuff like a rainy day fund. So then there'd be like a tax for a rainy day fund. Like you wouldn't pay a lot in one tax, but there'd be a million and two taxes that you'd be paying off.
You wouldn't need a tax for a rainy day fund because that's where budget surpluses are supposed to go.
Well,
but at the minute,
ideally,
surpluses from the budget can't go there at the minute because everybody's so fucking dead against paying for anything in this country.
The idea that there's a surplus in the budget is evidence that like there's enough money coming in to pay for services. Like there's billions sometimes in surpluses that they don't realize. They're like, oh Jesus, we're going to get loads of money this year, and you're kind of wondering like how are you Minister for Finance if like you're this far away from how much tax you thought you were going to take in? Like how are you this wrong?
No, they always know that there's going to be a surplus.
Yeah, but they always come out and go, oh, we were surprised about the amount of money that we're actually going to get in.
Yeah, they just say that.
But there's an extra.
They do always know.
No, but there's an extra surplus. That's what I mean. Like they come out and they go, oh well, the tax revenue coming in this year is greater than what we expected it to be, so we're going to have this much, and it's by billions. You're like, you are that far wrong.
Like that's where your rainy day fund comes in. That's what
yeah, but that's what I mean in terms of like when all this money is taken in.
Because your surplus, surplus gets put there because you could have like
let's say if you were paying road tax and all of it had to go on road tax, and let's say for whatever reason there's money left over for road tax, then that you can't take that out of the road tax because people go, well, no, reduce road tax. Because,
so they reduce it then the next year.
Well, then you don't. What would have happened is that surplus is put into the like rainy day fund, or possibly in a like agriculture area needs funding. So you go, well, we have a bit of money left over from road tax. We can put it into agriculture because we need it, or we can put it into a project down the line. Okay, it's not going on road tax, but like it will benefit the country in the long run. So I kind of feel like being that narrow-minded that has to go on road tax, or like when you can actually put it into other areas that need it, or into. But
that's a situation where, like, currently the roads need to be like infrastructure in this country is fucked. Like it needs to be sorted.
And we're also given grants by the EU to improve roads as well.
There's not enough money from road tax being spent on roads in this country.
No, we get grants from the EU to maintain it as well. And then if we don't maintain the roads, we get fined on top of that.
Yeah, so like that's what the problem is. That there's too much money coming in from areas that are being redirected to other areas because everybody in this country wants everything for fucking free.
I don't necessarily think it. I think the cost of living in Ireland is one of the more expensive places in Europe to live.
The cost of living in Sweden is a lot more expensive and everybody pays like massive tax and nobody complains.
Yeah, well, in terms of massive tax, but in terms of cost of living, in terms of overall cost of living, Ireland's one of the
cost of living
expensive.
In Sweden is ridiculous. Like people teachers in Sweden get paid nearly 100,000 a year because it's that expensive to live there.
Yeah, but if you're on 100,000 a year, I mean, in terms of cost, like your wages could be lower. Wages could be lower in Spain. I think like it's €6.
70, but their income tax rate is 70%.
Yeah, but like it's €6 to live in Spain. But whatever you're left with in the end of the day to live off, what you have to save with, what you could then buy with those savings, are greater. Your cost of living is greater than if you're on 100,000 and coming out with with barely anything, or like let's say you're coming out with 10,000, but you can't buy anything with that 10,000. Then your cost of living in Spain is better, even though you have less money, because that less money goes further. And I think that's where it comes. But in
Sweden, like a pint in Sweden is like over €15.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about in terms of when it's ranked by the EU or Europe, it comes out in terms of cost of living. Ireland's always is in the top 3 or top 5 cost of living. So the idea that Irish people want stuff for free, or Irish people are somehow like the Greeks are kind of lazy, no one to pay taxes and no one to do this. It's not really the case. Like it is like
It's 100% the case.
It's not really the case. If we're living like we're living in a country that has like cost of living in big cities, especially, is like on par with Paris.
Yeah, you're talking about capital cities. Capital cities in the whole world.
But like it's on par with Paris. But then when you look in terms of richest countries in Europe, like France and Italy, and then I think it's there's I think we're fourth richest economy in Europe, in the EU right now. Obviously England being out, and our cost of living is higher than like Germany, for instance, and stuff like this. Like Germany, if you have a second job, you don't pay tax on your second job, and like rent is ridiculously low. So people don't even bother buying houses. Like, there isn't a problem because people can afford to rent for the rest of their life for very, very little. Whereas over here, it's 3 times the price almost.
But again, that's down to stuff like they have higher tax rates and shit.
Yeah, but their cost of living is lower. Like, like in terms, if Irish people were able to pay more tax and live less and live off it less, like it's. Like this is regardless of tax. Like it doesn't really matter if your tax is higher or whatever. It's based off like in terms of if you tax Irish people more with higher cost of living already, cost of living doesn't come down. There isn't any proven metric just because you tax people loads of cost of living comes down.
If you have a higher tax rate and you pay for less public services, your cost of living inevitably goes down. You pay to go to the doctor. You don't have to pay to go to the hospital. You don't have to pay
But in terms of hospital bills, it wouldn't be a regular cost to Irish people. Like, you wouldn't see a lot. Obviously, there's some people who go to the hospital. But there wouldn't be huge costs. Like, that's very little.
Like, you don't have to pay for any, like, government services.
Yeah, but, like, how many government services are left in Ireland?
Well, like anything that's controlled by the EU, anything that's controlled by social welfare, anything that's controlled by anything like that, like you don't have to pay for any of it.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of, like, let's say public transport. Like, that's all
public transport is another one. Like, public transport drops because there's more money there going into it.
That's semi-private. They're semi-private. So, like, Ireland operates on a 2-tier strategy. It's like RTE are both public and private company at the same time. So people pay to fund RTE, but they also have advertisements on it. So they can't show what they want on it because they have to keep advertisers happy, but people are paying for it anyway. And that's kind of the system Ireland has. Plus Ireland is the same. It's a semi-private, semi-public company, so there is government funding going to it to keep it afloat, but there's also shareholders in it, and same with the Lewis, same with all these things. So it isn't a case where, if you just pay your tax, you get to go on a bus for free because private companies want to make profit. Industry of like public companies anymore. We used to, but we privatized it.
Public services, like in most countries, they're leased out to private companies. It's how you continue, like you keep like in Germany, you never get a late bus or a late train. It's all private companies that are on a rolling year by year contract. So if you get bad complaints, your contract is not renewed. It's the same with private roads. The only roads in this country that are in shit are ones that are maintained by county councils. A little shitty half job. Because your road tax that you pay in Kildare goes to fix a fucking road in Tala.
Well, like you said, all the money is conjoined, and you want that in a case.
But you don't. That's stupid. I think that's ridiculous. Like, so you could pay, like, everybody in, say, Loud that pays road tax, and there's maybe none of that money going to be actually spent in Loud.
Well, if there's this, like you said, a surplus of money coming from Loud to maintain the area, like obviously if the services in,
but you're not going to know the surplus, like especially with road repairs, you're not going to know it's a surplus until the end of the year.
Yeah,
because
the end of the year is paid for next year, but like tax isn't paid for that year; it's paid for the next year or the year after. It's budgeted. Well, we have this money coming in. We have 50,000. What do we need to spend on in the up and coming year? Okay, what projects need to be done? What surpluses, and you'd have a rough idea from last year how much it would cost in Kildare. So you're like, well, it cost 30 million last year we spent on different things in Kildare, and we have 50 million. Okay, well, down, let's say, so a smaller county. Well, there's a project there to do make it a one-way street or make it kind of a pedestrianised area or something like that. Well, they're going to go, well, we'll take some of the money off Kildare.
Yeah,
Any money that it saves in it just means that affluent areas have greater services and then poorer areas have lesser service. You want money to spread into the poorer areas to give people better services so that they can actually better themselves. That's what you don't want to keep stuff in pools so the rich get all the services because they're paying higher tax rates. You want money to be spread around evenly, so that people don't get caught in poverty traps.
You see, that doesn't happen though because people just go
necessarily.
Yeah, but no, the money doesn't get spread around evenly because they just go, there's a higher population here, so they get more money.
Well, no, what I'm saying,
they forget that higher population are already paying. Like, everybody's paying the same amount of tax, so the higher population are already bringing in higher money. So why do you have to take money off somewhere else?
Yeah, people are paying the same amount of tax, but some people aren't earning the same amount of money.
Yeah, but if you're living in Dublin where there's a higher rent and you're able to actually survive there and whatever, then chances are you can afford to pay the tax you're paying. So why is the tax money coming from Kildare to pay for shit that's going on in Dublin?
Because you can't afford to pay. Because you can't really afford. Let's say you're renting in Dublin.
Then you shouldn't be living there.
And you work in town, for instance, and the difference is between an hour commute into work, so you have to get up 2 hours earlier, and you finish at like an unreasonable time where there isn't trains. Let's say you work in the services industry and you finish at 1 a.m. where you just missed the last train back to Kildare, and so you have to wait for a night link, which is at 3 a.m. or you have to get to Lewis, which also finishes at 1 a.m. and so then you have to get a taxi to where the Lewis is to get a bus, which you might miss. You're waiting around for a bus for an hour at the Lewis. So it's now coming at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're not getting home until about 4 or 5. Whereas you could live in town, higher rent, but it's easier to get home. You can almost walk home, and it's half an hour. You have to pay to park your car outside your house, though. You have to pay a ridiculous amount of rent. You have to pay for still the privilege of living in Dublin and everything being expensive to live in Dublin.
I've always said this: if you can't afford to live somewhere else.
Well, look, you can afford to live there, and that's the idea. You need people to be able to work in a shop in Dublin, so people can buy rolls. You need people to be able to earn not as much money, but be able to live in built-up cities, because we need services. We need people to work in restaurants and be able to afford to live near the area. You can't have them all living in Meath and Donegal. We can't have people living in poxy towns and travelling hours because we don't have the services. We don't have great train networks. We don't, like England, we don't have an underground system. We don't have anything, and it involves people getting into cars. We can't, we don't have the road space for cars. Congestion then comes the problem. So it's better, to have people who work in the area live in the area.
You see, all these solutions that people have cost money as well.
Well, you want people to earn low amounts of money who live in a city, because then that reduces the price of living in that city. You want people to be able to work in a shop that's not on €20 an hour because they have an apartment in town. You know what I mean? Or else you have this ridiculous thing where you have 8 people living in a room, which is also unfair. A cure to is getting rid of small towns. Because we're talking about everybody commuting into Dublin, and I think get rid of these kippy towns where there's 4 houses and a bus, or 4 houses and a church, and we're paying to keep that thing going. Knock that down, send them into the next biggest town. And then you have all the money in the area going to one centralized area, so you get more services. Or
make cities non-inhabitable.
I think no, because I think
you can't live in a city.
You know people who want to live in the great out open of Offaly Fields, or Wicklow. They want to live in Wicklow because they're like so close to this. No, you can't live in Wicklow. It's too far away from Dublin. You're gonna go. You're gonna have to go to Dublin.
I think like logically it should be the opposite. It should be like you can't live in Dublin city centre. Sorry, it's
like
industrial.
if everybody lives in the one area, increase services. So you don't have to drive as far to places. Whereas everyone, like if you live in Poxdale, Blessington there, and you have to drive to Dublin, you have 5 people going the exact same route because they can't get a bus into Dublin, and instead of like people just getting loose and stuff like that, and services improve, and less people feel the need to have a car.
I just kind of hate Dublin.
We should get on to our Idiots Week. This is a part of the show created for idiots, by idiots, and it's where we talk about people doing really dumb things.
And being idiots.
And being idiots in general. One of the idiots that we're going to talk about is Nigel Farage, who's generally, he could be like Machine Gun Kelly. He could be like, we don't have to say, but he's an idiot of the week. Because he's just generally like a bit of a twat.
Yeah, he just is.
And he has this thing on Cameo. Cameo is this thing where famous people or public people in the public eye can charge you in terms of a message. Basically, you go through Cameo and you ask them to say this. And I think for Nigel Farage, for him to get a personalised message off Nigel Farage, it's €87.
£87.
Whatever. He's probably, he's pissed off at me now.
It's €103.
Yeah.
What is it in dollars? I don't know what it is in dollars.
And like, there's something really odd happening here. I think there's an. I'm going to presume he's Irish because of all the references that he's using. He's paying the £87 for Nigel Farage to give fake messages to people that have him saying sectarian things. So one of the first things that he got him to say was a happy birthday message to a Brexiteer that ended with the line "up the ra," which Nigel Farage says he allegedly had no idea the meaning of that, even though he was standing beside Jerry Adams once and they were talking, and Jerry Adams was saying why he doesn't want the Queen to come over to Ireland, why he doesn't think the time is right for that. Nigel Farage drinking a coffee beside him goes, "Up the ra." A pan to a close-up of Jerry Adams.
That didn't really happen.
Oh, was that? Oh, good shit. I got had. Oh, I got caught. Oh, fuck's sake, man. I'm an idiot. I think that is hilarious. I had actually a lot of respect for fucking Nigel Farage after I was like, fair play, that takes a lot of balls. I could just imagine going, oh shit.
Yeah, right. You got had.
I got had. Oh, I feel dumb. This is what this feels like. Yeah, so like, okay, so that didn't. And then there was another one where he said something about a Jerry Owens or a Gary Owen.
Yeah, he recited the song. That's the lyrics to the Wolf Tone song.
Yeah, and I heard a clip, but I couldn't find it again, where he referenced the Blackened Hands or something like that.
There's one where he wished Jerry Adams happy birthday.
Oh, maybe that was it?
Yeah, I think that was true.
Yeah, so like, so there's some Irish guy trolling Nigel Farage right now, but still paying him. So I don't know if it's necessary. Nigel is too worried about that because he's getting his £87 every time your man.
If you're going to pay me €105, it's $120.
Yeah,
$120 and 87 sterling. If you to fucking say whatever, I'm probably going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, I don't mind being a clown here. But yeah, and then plus he's getting huge publicity for this. People, I'm sure people are trying to find these clips on his Twitter page where he's saying this. And then people want to speak to him over the whole thing. People want to have his face on radio going, why did you say that about the IRA? And he's like, oh, I didn't know. While I'm here, let's talk about vaccines.
His defense, though, is stupid. Like, his defense of, I don't know, is a bit ridiculous.
I'd be like, do you know what?
Like
I'm
you're
given
a
a
very,
script. I read it.
you're a very prominent like British politician, and you don't know what the crack is with the IRA.
Yeah, but I'd be like, look at, I have to read a script, I get paid, go about my day. It's like, it's that simple. I don't put too much thought in what I'm saying.
Claire Byrne was the other one. Remember, he was on and he was lecturing Claire Byrne about Irish history.
Yeah, I've seen the clip where there's like, Nigel Farage owns Irish journalist. I think it was more about like, in terms of the Lipson-tree. And I know it's technically Irish history, but like...
Yeah, no, he was going on, he was like, why did Ireland fight Britain for 600 years if you're not going to leave Europe now and all this stuff? And she was like, here, shut the fuck up. Don't be telling us what to do, like.
Don't be telling us who our new sugar daddy is.
Yeah, she's like, shut the fuck up, like.
I didn't actually see that interview, but I might actually look up.
Yeah, I watched it. Claire Byrne and then Nigel Farage. Yeah, he's like, why did Ireland spend 500 years fighting against British rule? And she's like, here now, shut up. And then that's when she played the clip. She's like, so you're going to lecture us on Irish history, but let's just watch this clip. And it's him shouting up the ra. And she's like, do you want to explain this? Like, how do you like, go with this? Like, you don't even know your own history. Don't be fucking shite talking about Irish.
We're running quickly out of time. Will we get real quickly the other idiot of the week out of the way? This is...
Which one? The guy in the lake?
Yeah, the alligator attack.
Yeah, so a guy in Brazil, there was a lake and it has a load of signs on it saying, you know, no swimming, alligators. And he decides, I'm going to let in there anyway. So off he goes for a swim. Yeah, goes for a swim, got bit by an alligator.
Yeah, what did he was he like a tourist and it was in Portuguese? No, he's Portuguese. He was Brazilian. He
was Brazilian.
Yeah. There are a lot of people like that, but definitely a worthy idiot of the week. Yeah.
Like there's a video of it somewhere.
Well,
you want to see a guy get bit by an alligator?
If you have a stick up on our Facebook page, maybe our listeners can find us on @ShyTalkShow on Facebook page.
Watch a guy getting
be eaten by a shark.
Yeah. It should be funny that he did survive.
Yeah, he didn't get eaten alive. You're not going to watch a person die. Unlike the new movie Rust. Darren, Alec Baldwin. We're going to have to leave it there for this week's show before we get ourselves into too much trouble. We'll be back next week with our episode 116. Ken.
We'll be back or we'll be black?
Back in black.
Oh, I just said we'll be black.
Yo, what's up? We can banned off everything.
So this is our last show.
So that, yeah, exactly. The cancelled show. Mark and Ken. We'll create another podcast. Call it something else.
The Shit Talk Podcast show.
Yeah, the Clean Talk Podcast. The name's ironic.
We'll do like a certain jiu-jitsu coach. We just call it the Not Shite Talk Podcast show.
The Wink Wink No Judge. Shite Talk Podcast show. Yeah, but we'll leave it there for this week's show. We'll be back next week. Talk to you soon.
Good luck.
Shut up and sit down.